Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
What's next for the Memphis Airport? Tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian. Thanks for joining us. I am joined tonight by Scott Brockman, President and CEO of the Memphis Airport Authority. Thanks for being here again.
My pleasure.
Along with Mike Keeney, Chair of the Board of Commissioners of the Memphis Airport Authority. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Eric.
We'll talk a bit. Y'all made some news recently. You are moving out of the position. Your COO is taking over as CEO at the end of this year. We'll talk maybe a little bit at the end about the transition. But it's been a couple years, partly because of COVID, since we've had you on, Scott. And a year plus now, year and some months that the new passenger terminal has been open. And I honestly say, and I travel quite a bit, I have not heard a single complaint about that new terminal, and it's been kind of overwhelming praise for it. So there's that.
You know, it's amazing that even today, and we get people that have said, I've traveled 15 times in the last year, and every time I walk in this new concourse, I just smile. Right. And I just want to say thanks. They still love it. It's just a fabulous building, and it was a long time coming, but I couldn't be prouder of what the team accomplished.
Yeah, I told you before we started, I told you both, I had some family in town who hadn't been in town many, many times over the years, my brother and his wife, but hadn't been in town since before COVID, and they literally had that sensation of like, we thought we got off on the wrong city, like, because we just remember the old brown, dark, kind of sort of cigarette smoked, stained, walls of the old airport. With all that said, what about the rest? So let's move on to, there's still things to do, right? I mean, you guys have a plan for the main terminal. You've got the baggage area. Walk through the plan. We'll talk first about the passenger side of the airport, and then we'll kind of segue into the freight side, which is obviously a huge, huge component of what the airport does.
Well, the concourse project was really big because it kind of sets the tone for the vision of the rest of the airport. And so the next step we're going to embark on, I honestly believe, and I hope this summer, the first phase. Now, I will tell you that this is going to be a long process because when you move into the terminal, ticketing, baggage claim, it's not the big vaulted ceiling in the front of the house. When you come in through the roadway system and you enter that vestibule, and the ticket counters are in front of you, that whole area is going to get rebuilt, if you will, modernized, expanded. We're going to bring that same look and feel of the concourse out to the front of the building. The challenge is unlike the concourse where we could build a construction wall and just build it. This, we have to be able to do it in phases and pieces with construction walls and navigate people through all that while you're trying to build all of this stuff around it. But we hope to start this summer, and
that'll be a 2-year project kind of thing?
No. I think the first phase, which is $150 million.
Just in that opening space, in that entrance space.
Well, the vision across the entire project, and we have to define how those phases are going to go, is really taking all 3 ticketing lobbies, A, B, and C, connecting them in more of a visible line of sight. Right. Take the entire north wall of that building, which is now bricks and offices and concessionaires. Take all that and move it. Make it bigger, and create a glass wall on the entire front like the concourse. So, it's probably, I would guess that to get that core part of that entire building done, which is really moving the north wall, relocating the vertical transportation, stairs, escalators, elevators, out to the outer wall, and then moving the ticket counters, expanding those out to the east and the west, and expanding the TSA checkpoint. We are woefully short on lanes for the amount of passengers we have traveling. The lines are getting way too long. So all that, I would tell you that project is easily probably 5 to 7 years. Okay. Because of the way the phases have to flow in order to manage.
To keep it operating.
Operations.
One more question, I'll go to Mike. You said about $150 million. How much was the concourse project? give or take?
The total concourse project was about $225 million, but that included enabling projects on A and C to be able to move airlines.
Gotcha.
The actual contract for the concourse was about $140 million.
Right.
With
Okay,
changes
so
and change
comparable
orders.
in some ways.
So comparable, much more complicated in the front of the house. And we have, the difference was the B concourse, we basically leveled the top and built a new structure around it. This case, we've got to come in and seismically upgrade an historical facility and keep that structure while modernizing it, seismically upgrading it, and expanding.
We'll talk about more parts of that, but I want to go to Mike. So Board of Commissioners oversees the whole. Your role is not so much to pick and choose the glass walls and the paint colors, I assume. Yeah,
that would be a disaster.
But the $220 million that has just been invested, this $150 million in the front of house, as Scott calls it, that gets paid for how? That is financially responsible because in what way? I mean, those sort of big picture questions about the sustainability and the, if not profitability, but the financial health of the airport.
Sure.
Authority.
Well, the big picture especially on those projects, and I may have to hand some of this over to Scott because he knows the details, and I make it my business not to get in the middle of the details. But that especially a lot of the terminal improvements are going to come from the infrastructure bill that was passed by Congress. When was that, Scott? Whenever it was.
We're in the second year.
We're in the second year, and so that was created. They created a grant program, and airports were included in that, and it was a competitive process in order to get some of that. And so, we were able to successfully get some of this money. And I also will add on to. I'm not answering your whole question. I know that, but the other piece is that. When what Scott just talked about was the beginning of the terminal. That's not everything. I mean, what people also realize if they've been to the airport recently and tried to find a parking spot, we're tight on parking. And so we've got the rental cars that are on the first two levels of the parking garage, then plus the rest of the parking garage. Well, we run out of spots. In fact, at our last board meeting, we had to authorize they're going to have to reconfigure parts of the airfield so that we can have more parking area.
Off to the left and right of the surface lines.
That's 100% right.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to, another part of this project that's on our master plan is we're going to build a new rental car facility, and then that will then free up some of that space for parking.
And so we were talking about this before, checking my math, that we're about 10 years from being dehubbed by Delta. So Delta bought Northwest in 08, 09, something like that. In bankruptcy. We go through the financial crisis. They make some promises that Memphis will remain a big part of the hub system, so on. That goes away. The airport fell. You took your job going, I think, from COO to CEO in 2014 when things were really grim, right? The number of flights had gone from 250 to 300 at the peak to in the 30s, 40s, 50s.
Total flights were down in the 60s. Yeah.
Down in the 60s in terms of nonstop flights.
Delta dropped from roughly 200 a day to 17.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So how often do people say, well, when are we going to get a hub back? When are we going to get back to 200 flights? Those questions about passenger growth, are we ever going to get back to 200 in not by January, so it's not your problem, and also where are we now in terms of number of daily flights?
Number of daily flights right now are about 80, between 80 and 90. It depends on the day you pick and in the time of year you pick. The thing is that it's not. Really, it's unserved markets that we're attacking, trying to add those markets we don't have today. And because the industry has changed radically. We used to have 300 and something flights a day, but the average number of seats was 50.
Because of all the smaller regional
Because we had 34-seat Saabs, we had the 59-seat Avros, we had a lot of small planes, the 50-seat RJs. Now we're flying big planes. Most of them. We've got, a majority of our flights are mainline. So the average number of seats per aircraft has gone from 58 to 128.
Really?
Yes. And so you've got a lot of 180, 190 seat, aircraft, this flying domestically. These are big planes. And so, the challenge is what are we doing on seats? What are we doing on destinations, nonstop destinations? And what are we doing on the number of seats? How are we growing that?
Right.
Because the dynamics of the industry with COVID have changed radically.
People want, I have so many questions. People want, flights to the West Coast. I know that comes up a lot. San Francisco, Seattle, Portland. It's where we do have a number of direct flights to LA. There's other cities people pick and choose. How do you, though, approach, we are going to go here or not, right? I mean, it's very much up to the airline, right? I mean, I think sometimes you see in comments and you see on social media people like, why doesn't the airport just, start a flight to San Francisco, right? I'm sure you would love to be able to wave a magic wand and do that. So how did the dynamics, the back and forth with the airlines work? And then also, what is the role of incentives at this point in terms of incenting airlines to pick up a route?
Well, first of all, we look at what there's software and there's federal databases that we can tap into to see what's called a PDU, a passenger daily each way. So we get data, and it doesn't matter whether you fly through Atlanta to get to somewhere, we're tracking what your final destination is. Yeah. So we look at those markets that we know are lacking. You hit some, San Diego, Seattle, San Francisco, a lot of it West Coast. And we look at those, and you look and you go, okay, what's the PDUs? And the PDUs, in a lot of those cases, the PDUs are less than 100. Now that's a 1,500 to 1,800 mile stage length. You're not flying a small plane there because of the distance that they're allowed to fly them. A 2-class RJ, a CRJ 900. You can't get there. So you got to fly a mainline aircraft, which is 160 to 180 seats, and you can document
the demand just isn't there.
70. So what we have to do is to get more creative in looking at how do you spur demand? How do you look at what the demand really is? There are people that are outside the Memphis Metroplex, okay, that really come from further away, that if we had a flight would fly. Because we proved that with the hub. When we had the hub, they came from as far as 120, 200 miles away to pick up a flight. So we're changing our direction a little bit on air service and getting a lot more strategic. Kind of one of my last gifts to the airport before I leave is to really restructure how we approach attacking air service, because the industry's changed radically.
Yeah. But still,
in the last 2 years, and through COVID, it's drastically changed. And keep in mind, when we had those 300 flights a day, most everybody were changing planes in the airport. We've now converted. That's what Scott really did a good job under his leadership. Is we converted from what they call we're an O&D airport now. We're origination and destination. So we're serving more Memphians than we did when we were a hub, just in a different way.
The incentives. Are you all still doing incentives to get people to try out flights? I know you were at one point.
We do some incentives. The problem is
and this is basically paying an airline money to underwrite the potential gap between the number. This is how I put it. Between the number of the demand number you described, what they need to make money on it, and you say, hey, for a period of time, we'll incent you to help fill what you might lose money on that route, but we think if they keep doing it, more people will use it than you think.
We have a limited capability to do that just because of the structure of how our relationship is with our airlines. And I don't want to get too geeky, but we're full residual, which means that the airlines pay for everything.
Okay.
And you cannot take one airline's money and use it to offset the cost of another.
Right.
So you have to have independent money. So we did, for a period of time, we had about $2 million that was generated outside of the airline fees that we were using not to pay someone cash to fly a flight, but to offset their fees. We gave them landing fee waivers so they could land and not have to pay. But we had to take the money from our own savings account and give it back to the system when we did it.
Yeah.
So it's really a highly regulated part of the business, the incentive part.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as it sounds.
We'll stay with some of the passenger, but segue into, the airport is still the biggest cargo airport in the world, or one or two. There was a period of time where Shanghai, I think, was a little bit more, but for you, Mike, people, if they know you're on the airport board, you're very connected politically in the business community. How many people do you think who primarily use the airport as a passenger airport understand, they know FedEx is here, they maybe drive by the planes, but probably don't fully get how much of that airport facility is paid for by FedEx's presence?
It's unbelievable. And I think, when you drive down Plow Boulevard and you're going to the airport and you see all of those airplanes, the purple tails, as we like to say, that are over there. It's incredible. And we are easily the busiest airport in the world between midnight and 5 a.m. or, that's just where everything's flying. And the other thing I would say is I'll be on the airport authority, and the people that call me and ask me, they're like, hey, why aren't we having a nonstop to Moline, Illinois, or Seattle, Washington, or whatever it is? It is complicated, for one, and you've really got to work with these airlines to be able to show these airlines aren't dumb. I mean, they're gonna go somewhere where it's profitable. And so if we've got the passengers that we're going to be able to fill airplanes, they're going to put a flight there.
Well, and anybody who flies a lot and I've flown a lot for my whole life for a variety of reasons. You used to get, you get on a plane, you might get an empty middle seat. If you were in the wind, you could gamble, and you could be on planes that were half full. You could be planes that were, easily 20% empty. Planes are not empty, right?
No,
the airlines have changed everything in the way they book and the way they monitor this. It's every dollar, every seat. And so that it is different than the old days, right? Where you could have a flight to Moline that might be half full, and somehow that made sense to the airlines. The airlines have also made a lot of dumb decisions in the past, and had a number of government bailouts just in my lifetime.
But I'll also say that we compete with the interstate sometimes. So that's why these ultra low cost carriers, the Spirit Airlines, the Allegiant Airlines, they have been unbelievably successful in Memphis. Because people who may not, think about flying to Las Vegas, but Allegiant has they've got great flights to Las Vegas, and they're full. They are really full.
How many airlines now, give or take, fly out of
9.
Whereas when we were a hub, that 300 flights was 98%
dominated by
Northwest,
one.
and there were real costs associated with that. There were real advantages. There were huge advantages,
but
there were also real costs.
4 airlines when we were a hub. Okay, we had AirTran, we had United, American, and Delta.
Yeah.
Well, Northwest until they merged. I counted them together. And 75% of the flights were in one airline, 80%.
Yeah.
And so.
Let's switch back to the construction. The other thing people talk about, parking. What is when there is overflow? Let me ask it this way: Did the airport authority miscalculate the demand when it built the big new garage?
I'm going to laugh because when we built that garage was during the D-Hub. And if you remember the articles back then, people chastised us for why are these dummies building a parking garage when they're being D-Hubbed.
Right.
No, I think that based upon the no one could predict the switch to O&D the way we've done. The master plan spells out a pretty good pathway to growing parking. The problem is that when we came back from COVID, March of this year, spring break of this year, we leaped back to, we're in growth mode now. This fiscal year, or this calendar year, January, February, March, we don't have final April numbers, but I would venture to say April. All of those are higher than 2019. And so we are back to that trend post D-Hub where we're back in a growth mode. And the problem is not the number of people that are traveling, it's how long they're staying in the parking lot. They used to leave on a Monday and come back on a Wednesday. Now they're leaving on Monday, taking their family with them and staying for 10 days or whatever. So the car in the parking lot is not there for 2 days. It's now there for 7, 10, 12.
Right.
We don't get that space back.
So stay with the parking thing. Mike, you and I made a terrible mistake with each other years ago. We gave each other our phone numbers, and you to give me positive, constructive feedback on various articles we write, and me to complain about the garage elevators.
That's correct.
And so the elevators in the garage, which we were talking about before, because it is a running joke between us, but it's also, and you take it seriously, it's a joke, but it's not, right?
Right.
The elevators in the garage are 4 banks. We had a letter to the editor once. They got all this play. People really do focus on these elevators never work. But you told me why before. What happened?
What we learned is when they were originally installed, and this was years ago, and then through the construction and everything else, these elevators we learned were they really weren't supposed to be used in humid areas. And in an outside parking garage in Memphis, Tennessee, I'm not sure there is any more humid area than there is.
Yeah.
But I will say this: for the board took it, and the staff took it unbelievably very serious, because, look, that's what we were hearing. Not just from you, a lot from you, but not just from you.
Every time I flew, for about a 6-month period.
And so we've bid it out, and we are replacing all the elevators. But I must tell the viewers is that Now we're in a problem with getting parts and trying to get it together. We've got a supply chain issue, and we're going to get them there, but we're in the process of replacing those.
Back to when paying for things, the airport does not rely on local tax revenue. Is that correct? It is the fees you charge the airlines, the FedExes, all the tenants. Is that right?
We have to generate all our own revenue.
Some state money, some state grants, and some big federal grants, as we talked about before.
Some state money, some federal grants.
Right. How much does, I mean, if you look and say, all right, we got to fix $1 million, elevator fix, is that money out of the big bucket that includes fees from FedEx, or is that, do you try to look at it very separately, because that elevator, that parking garage is for passengers, not FedEx employees? I mean, how is that? It's a small thing, but it's a big thing, right? I'm just curious about this distinction for you in operating this massive freight airport and this good-sized and growing passenger airport.
We collect revenue from the different sources. So FedEx pays landing fees, and we have, and that landing fee is set based upon the cost to maintain the airfield. So it's not like I can take a landing fee FedEx planes and put it in the terminal, because I still have to maintain an airfield. We have to generate, so we have to move money around in our budget. So what we did for these elevators, because it was such a problem and it was so difficult to try to keep them alive because they were not the right elevators for the garage, is we basically moved money around within our capital outlay budget on the terminal side of the slate and went to the board and said, this is important enough.
Yeah.
Okay, we can't keep playing this game of chase and maintenance.
Yeah. With just a couple minutes left here, Doug McGowan right now, the head of, relatively new head of MLGW, is talking a lot about, he was on the show after he got the job in January after the big storms in the winter. He's talking a lot about changes to the grid system. Some of that is all climate change, right? I mean, just weather events, we've had more severe weather events. How much for long-term planning, how much do you all weigh that? That look, do you have to say we have to plan for more and more severe weather, hotter and hotter days, and what does that mean both on the freight side and the passenger side?
Well, I'll take a quick shot at it, and Scott will have his comments as well. But I mean, obviously, all that comes into. I'm gonna make a little bit of a U-turn on you on that question, because one thing, when you brought up McGowan, one thing that we also have to worry about is electric vehicles. All this new talk about that. Well, how are we going to install more charging stations? We get that about the parking garage. Well, speaking of McGowan, we've got a problem having enough power to be able to get to the airport and to be able to utilize all of that. So, and I say that is because I think that's part of the whole climate. We do have more severe weather things that are going on, and that we have to prepare for. And with FedEx, they don't take the time off. You still want your package, whether it's raining and storming or whatever it is in Memphis. You're still going to want that package the next day.
Yeah.
So
for you, in terms of the planning, and your successor will take on planning for more and more severe weather.
Well, that's always, safety is paramount. So we always look at how those things affect our operations. The airport right now has diesel generators that we installed after Hurricane Elvis in 2004, 2003, when the straight line winds took out the entire power grid. And we installed those generators back then. So we can power, as long as we can get diesel, we can power it, generate power for the terminal. The challenge is the board just recently approved about 3 months ago an electric need study to look at not only today but the future, because it's not just charging rental cars in the rental car garage. It's all of the electric vehicles that are going on within the airfield operation completely, tugs and buses and different things. But and Doug McGowan and I have talked about, how are you going to provide the power to us reliably and at the kilowatts that we need to do all this?
And that's not just for the passenger side, that's for the freight side.
No, that's for everybody. Yeah. So we've talked about the need to partner, MLGW, the state, and the airport, in a microgrid at the airport, where we generate power through alternative sources, to support them, but also to take stress off of the grid by providing enough of our own. We will go to some solar, we will go to some other stuff, and have to blend all that in an overall electrical plan.
One thing I would, this is maybe way too wonky, but anyway, I'm going to ask it anyway. When you're in the airport, it's an interesting thing that as you walk in, you've got the people, you've got the security out front, then you've got the people at the desk who work for Delta, they work for Allegiant, they work for whatever airline brand. You've got TSA, you've got vendors who have employees, you've got more airline employees, you've got people running around on the tarmac, moving things around. Some of those employees work for the airport authority. A lot of them work for the airlines. They work for third parties. And I was thinking about it, it's the analogy of like a commercial real estate building, an office building. You have all these different tenants, except they don't all work together. These people all have to work together. So I am curious about that how many employees and what services do you all provide? Because it's not TSA and it's not the airline people, but what else is going on in there that is provided by the employees of the airport authority?
Well, to put it in perspective, Eric, there's about 4,000 employees on site every day total, okay, all of the operations. The airport authority employs 300 or less.
Okay.
So, less than 10%. What our people do is we have, they're the police, okay, security. They are the administrative people that manage the facility. Right. We have building maintenance. We're running almost a small city, so we've got 1 million square feet of building. So we've got people running those. We've got contract.
I asked you a big question and didn't look at my clock. We ran out of time. We also didn't talk to you about your transition. Hopefully we'll get you on before that. But thank you both for being here. Sorry to cut you off at the end. Apologies. Mike, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
That is all the time we have this week. Join us again next week. If you missed any of the show today, you can get it online at WKNO.org or download the full podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next week.